license and registration, he can sense your aggravation.
On the head of the fallen angel.
When the world is muttering under the floorboards, stomp even louder.
Time.
Let them know you are alive today.
Or unhum.
Did you know that your hands came with a ripple effect?
Whisper tones unraveling like silk.
Blood, sweat, and tears win by any means poetry.
Sway, look at me. Is a piece of the pie too good for me?
Some may call it rock the mic. We call it poetry.
Such an innocent smile. Not a smirk. Certainly not a whistle. Just a 14-year-old adolescent Chicago boy smile. Free and confident. Surely that was part of the problem. They couldn't take back free, but confident? Well, confidence don't wear well on Black folk in some parts of this country, like Money, Mississippi. Looms like a noose, or a 75-pound cotton gin fan around the neck. And when shuffling along with lowered eyes ain't the order of the day, when sidewalks aren't clear, when voices don't go to whisper, dander gets stirred. Some folk get riled past the point of agitation. His age didn't matter. Her purity was clean, as always. So sacred hoods came out, crosses itched to be set ablaze when ways of life were threatened in 1955. Posses coalesced, late night assemblages that snatched young boys at gunpoint as fear-filled Black families release their son into destiny's midnight, knowing they would never be seen again, except as a mutilated corpse to be pulled from the Tallahatchie River. Emmett, a sacrificial lamb of the civil rights movement, one among thousands, slaughtered in malignant lynching places like Money, Mississippi. Hello, welcome to Sojourn with Words right here on CTV. I'm your host, Sistah Joy, and today we have a wonderful young poet, and I think it's safe to say young because she is officially the 2022 Youth Poet Laureate of Prince George's County. I'm speaking of Imani Grace West. Now, she goes by Imani Grace, so I'm going to try to remember to say that as I'm addressing her. But I am so very glad. Imani, welcome to Sojourn with Words.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we're glad. I know you're a student and you had to find a way to make this happen, so we greatly appreciate that you made yourself available. Now, some of you may have become familiar with Imani over the past couple of years because she's been a very present focus and force in the poetry scene in Prince George's County over these past few years. So let me tell you a little bit about Imani Grace West. She is now a third-year student at Hampton University, where she majors in English with a concentration in creative writing. Now, Imani is a lover of words. Sister, yes, and all things writing. Her current interests include writing poetry, of course, filmmaking, playwriting, social justice, and public policy. Her work has been featured in numerous publications, poetic journals, student anthologies, community anthologies, and I know she's going to be featured in an upcoming anthology titled Poets That Dance with Words that I'm editing. So I'm very honored that she's with us today here on Sojourn with Words. That anthology that I just referenced is the inaugural poetry anthology of the Prince George's Arts and Humanities Council. So welcome and thank you, Imani. Now, her goal is to tell stories that inspire and uplift while also challenging her audiences to read between the lines and to think beyond the literal meaning of words. Imani, how do you approach that? Not just what's on the page that you want to convey, but how do you get inside the mind and the spirit of your audience?
Well, I personally try to attach the words to feeling. So it's easier to connect with people when you have a feeling that you're trying to capture with the words so that they can identify with it. So for example, I know COVID-19 was a huge breakdown for a lot of people, and it caused a lot of things to be put on pause or things to stop or opportunities to be lost, especially for the young people right now who are in school and who are trying to get their lives started and their careers started. And so when writing poems about things like that, you try to attack the emotion of maybe heartbreak or loss or something that you can identify with as an audience member so that you identify with the poetry more and you identify with the work. And so that I can connect to them on that level, because I also had that experience. When COVID started, I was a senior in high school. So I lost graduation. I lost my senior prom. I lost everything. So, that's kind of how I try to do that.
Right. And certainly COVID has affected all of us, every generation, no matter where you fall in the spectrum. When you find yourself tackling the messages that you would lift about COVID or about losses as a result of COVID, what is it that draws you most?
I would say just the grief of it, because any loss causes grief, whether it's the loss of a loved one, which many people unfortunately did lose, family members, friends, people that they knew to COVID. But that grief it's a gut-wrenching feeling. It's something that sits in your chest. You ever had that feeling when it's like it's stuck inside? And so writing poetry in that sense, being able to get it out onto the paper is a tough task, but that's what I connect to with that topic because it's so emotional.
Right. Now, certainly as a young poet who is impacted by, and I can't say was, I'll say is impacted by this pandemic, how do you not get overwhelmed by that component of your life, because it's such a pivotal time, and yet there's so much more to life and to your life experience that you're a college student, third year college student. There's many things that I know personally that you were involved with and engaged with other organizations. How do you not let this pull you away from your center? What works for you? And then we're going to move away from COVID, because I don't want this to be the sum total of what we're talking about.
Right. So for me, I choose art as my way of kind of pulling myself out of it, Because I don't want COVID to be the end of my story, because
Yes.
this pandemic is not going to be, like you said, the sum of my story or what I have to offer. And so it's not going to be a defining moment for me. I want to be able to push past that. And so art has allowed me to do that, where, yes, COVID, pushed us back a little bit, but words have the power to overwhelm and engulf these situations and these happenings and make them not always positive, but you can make something positive out of it and change your life for the better. Like, you don't have to just sulk and sit in it.
Exactly. Well, tell us, why did you start writing poetry? Let's go to the beginning.
Okay, so in 6th grade, I did a poetry unit and I started reading Nikki Giovanni for the first time. I had never encountered her literature ever, so I was really excited to learn about someone new, and especially a Black woman in the literary space. And so I learned about her and I started writing my own poems for classwork, because that's what it was at the time. It was just classwork. And so then my mom ended up organizing an event for my 6th grade class to meet Nikki Giovanni after we finished our poetry unit. And so I had the chance to read my poem in front of this legend. And I was just amazed by just everything that was her aura, everything about her. And she told me that my poem was like pretty good. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, like, I cannot believe this. And so I was like, you know what, maybe this is something I want to do. So then I just kept going.
Wonderful. What a wonderful and extraordinary opportunity for you and your classmates. Kudos to your mom. Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, let's talk a little bit about your writing process. There are poets that have to be in a certain physical space to write, or they have to write at a certain time of day, or they have to only write with pen in hand versus only have to create on their desktop or laptop or phone even now. But aside from the physical aspects of the writing process, which we do want to hear about, talk to us about your writing process. Where do you go mentally? What is your writing process?
Of course. So as I talked about earlier, I pull from emotion. So my best work comes from times when I don't know what to say. I don't know how to describe how I'm feeling. So instead of having to talk about it, I just write it down. Also, like, I really like nature. So nature also inspires me. And just seeing what God has created, I mean, it leaves you speechless. And so in that speechless space, I write and I think and I meditate on what I'm seeing, what I'm feeling. For me, mostly, I like to write with pen and paper because it's a more physical and immersive experience for me when I can do that and I can feel the words physically coming out. But they always get translated to my computer just for today's time, sending it around and stuff like that.
Right. Well, I hope you hold on to those handwritten notes. When we look back to, Emily Dickinson, there was a treasure trove of handwritten poems. Of course, the advent of computers was not existent, but there's something to be said about having the handwritten writings of renowned poems, and I'm speaking prophetically now. So of renowned poems that, especially those who have started their writing career at such a youthful age and have reached such accomplishments as being named the youth poet laureate of a county. That's heavy stuff. So hold on to those written and signed and dated. And I encourage all writers to always date your writings so that you can look back and see where you were at time X along your continuum. It makes a difference, and it gives you and others a sense of your trajectory as a writer. So now you talked about nature as a source of inspiration, and I heard also some reference to spirituality. Talk to us about the issues of interest. What pulls you to writing most often? But what is it that you aspire to convey most in your writings?
Okay, so in the beginning of my writing career, poetry career, I mostly wrote about being Black and being a young woman, a young girl throughout my time. And the feeling that came with that is just looking at the injustices that are a part of our everyday life. Unfortunately, that's just the way it has been. And so taking that and just writing about that. So I really like writing about feminist politics, feminist poetry, and Black women, especially with the different health disparities and everything else that we endure. Also, just Black people in general, police brutality, disparities in education, and different things like that. But then I also like talking about nature and how it is a part of us and how we are a part of it. And also, sometimes I like to write poems about very like funny things, like just random everyday things, like the fact that as a writer, like I experience writer's block very often before I write a poem. And I wrote a poem about it, and it just became something that every time I feel something, I'm like, let me just write it down. Let me just write it down. So it could be anything, really.
So to write a poem about writer's block, that's the quintessential moment. Yeah, you can't. I don't know if we're going to hear that today or not, but interesting. And I'm sure you're not. There are many who have taken on that subject, and it often turns to a fun piece because the very process is counterproductive to, counter to the notion of having writer's block. So now, when you talk about the style and the form, what are your favorite poetic techniques? And is there are you known to write in sonnets? Do you do open or free verse? What is it that you gravitate towards stylistically when you write a poem?
So most of my poetry is free verse. Okay. However, as I've been in college and I've been studying creative writing and I've been studying poetry extensively, I've learned about different forms of poetry and different terms that I can use within my poetry that has really expanded my mind. So I really like to write. I've known about haikus my entire poetry career, but in college, writing haikus was like such a transformative experience just because like we don't appreciate the short poems. I feel like people always like gravitate towards like the long, like drawn out poems, but sometimes like we can convey very strong messages in very short amounts of time. And so I feel like we should, bring haikus back to the forefront. They're pretty cool. I also like kwansabas, which are African American praise poems. I talked about it in a previous interview or another segment somewhere else, but I really enjoy writing about it because it aligns with my style that I started with. So I like those too.
Okay, well, hopefully we'll get a chance to hear some of those. Just final question, what's next? What's on the horizon? And we only have like a minute and a half.
Okay, we'll try to get through this quickly. So for the immediate future, my plan is to write a chapbook and of poetry, obviously, a chapbook of poetry ranging on things that I've written during my college career. And then I plan to obviously graduate in 2024, and then maybe also pursue graduate school in another country to learn more about writing, to learn more about diaspora of writing, to learn more about how I can advance my writing in even more different styles than I've already explored. So that's
Wonderful,
hopefully what's
ambitious
next.
and beautiful. Well, I hope all of those aspirations come about for you. I'm just absolutely thrilled to be able to anticipate some of what we're about to hear now. And so for our viewing audience, once again, you are listening to the discussion with Imani Grace West, a third-year student at Hampton University, and more significantly, or at least as significant, she is the 2022 Youth Poet Laureate of Prince George's County, Maryland. We're very honored to have her with us. And Imani, thank you for sharing a little bit about yourself. Is there a website or information that where persons can learn more about you?
Yes. You can find me on Instagram at Imani Grace. Imani spelled with 2 I's at the end and Grace spelled with 2 E's at the end. And I also have an email, the same sort of tag, Imani with 2 I's, Grace with 2 E's, 22 at gmail.com.
Okay. And we didn't mention it, but Dialect of Prince George's is also an organization that you're connected with. I know Patrick Washington is very proud of you as the reigning Youth Poet Laureate, and kudos and shout out to Patrick Washington, founder and director of Dialect of Prince George's, which manages and coordinates the Youth Poet Laureate program. So that pretty much wraps up our interview portion of this episode of Sojourn with Words. We're going to now hear some poetry by Imani Grace, which is her stage name. And for those that have not been in touch with her previously, please reach out to her and give her some feedback. Let her know what you think about this young budding poet who is actually more than just budding. She's done quite a bit, and we're absolutely thrilled to have her here on CTV on Sojourn with Words.
Okay, so this poem is called The Poem. This is the poem I was talking about with the writer's block, so hopefully you enjoy it. The poem. Ode to the days my pen never touched the paper, my mind void of creativity, becoming a wasteland of crumpled papers and poetic cliches. Ode to the lost poem, the one that never made it out the notes app on my phone. Yeah, that one. The one with a title and nothing more, inspiration that came and then went. Ode to that lonely notebook, collecting dust in my desk drawer, gutted of most of its pages, each poem taking a piece, its spine frail, strings flowing, unable to carry the weight of the words it once held. On the days my pen never touches the paper, I am the poem. So ode to the poem I am becoming. Yeah, this one, the poem that gets worked on and saved for later. Just like it, I am a work in progress. Ode to this poem, the poem that has its imperfections, things that could be said differently, has its emotions waxing and waning like the moon. Ode to this poem that, although unfinished, is still a masterpiece. Thank you. I have another poem. This poem is called On Beginnings, and it was actually commissioned for the 2022 opening convocation for Hampton University. So I'm going to go ahead and read it for you. On Beginnings. One might consider the beginning of any narrative the most difficult to brave, afraid of the unknown, how we weathered the ascendancy of a silent disease. The minutes felt like miles. We have traveled far to get to this place, where desolation no longer has dominion over these halls. We rose above the ruins. We rise above the ruins now. We have overcome to become an overt example of excellence, a beacon of light. For such a time as this, Today is a day of reinvention, a beckoning for a breakthrough, a day to challenge our ideals, with the eyes of history gazing upon us. One might consider the beginning of any narrative the most difficult to brave. We turn to an unfinished chapter, seeking answers for the coming days. Who are we becoming? We are the authors of our own history. The foundation has been laid. Sankofa. Thank you.
Fabulous.
Thank you.
Please give us more.
Okay. This poem is called My Hair, My Crown, and I've read it a couple times, but I thought it would be great to share it. Here we go. The crown on my head is worth more than gold, more than silver or copper or bronze. The crown on my head is sacred. It is history rolled between palms, shea butter, and mazes mapping the way to freedom. This crown has crossed continents, been beaten, burned alive, thrown into the Atlantic, and still carried the weight of the world in the grip of its coils, faced death in the grocery store, in the car, in the church, at home. This hair story is not for the weak. This hair waited 400 years for the freedom that still comes with a cost. This crown, the one my ancestors bled for, this crown, their wildest dreams come true. This hair is resilient. How it always finds its way back to the sky. How it always finds a way to dance in the wind. How it always grows where it is planted. How it always loves when others don't love it black. This hair be shapeshifter. Be fried, dyed, laid to the side, cut, and even multiplied. This hair has layers. Can slay the office or the stage, the field or the court. Yes, this hair is activism, a movement. Yes, my hair is political, controversial, defying the laws of gravity and society. This hair can do bad all by itself. This hair imitated but never duplicated. No, you cannot touch it. My crown will not write you an apology letter. Make room for you if you're uncomfortable. This hair will not bow to you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think we have a minute, maybe a minute and a half left. Can we get one more, maybe a haiku or a trilogy of a haiku?
Yes. Okay. So this one is actually untitled. I don't have a title for it, but here we go. Snowflakes on my head, dreaming of summer's hot glare, sand between my toes, fall nights and rainstorms, colors unseen in springtime, leaves swirled and falter. Spring flowers grow up like children young and thirsty. Rain comes and drowns them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Again, for those that perhaps just joined us, then we are listening to the wonderful poetry of 2022 Prince George's County Youth Poet Laureate, Imani Grace. Imani, thank you for being our guest here on Sojourn with Words. We look forward to this opportunity to introduce you to a new audience, but we know that many who are viewing already know you and are excited to see you here on the show. So again, we look forward to hearing about future opportunities. Is there anything that you wanted to convey? We've already given you contact information. Is there anything on the horizon, maybe in 2023, that you want to tell folks to look out for?
Maybe a book, maybe something.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to just trying my options and seeing what I can do. But thank you guys for giving me this opportunity.
Well, we hope some of the publishers that may be viewing this will be looking for the voice and the writings of Imani Grace West. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. This concludes the episode of today's Sojourn with Words, and we certainly know that everybody who is on this call is aware that what is it we encourage you to do? Pick up a pen and keep writing.